Thank you so much, Reverend Kirsten, and thank you to everyone for joining us. As Kirsten said, my name is Hillary Zakin, and I'm the Director of Multi-Faith Programming and Engagement here at Elon's Truett Center for Religious and Spiritual Life. We have a full panel here today of community members, faculty and staff, and students who will engage in conversation around the theme that Kirsten mentioned earlier. So first, I'd like to invite our panel to introduce themselves.
I guess I get to go first. Hello. I'm Toddy Peters. I'm professor of religious studies. I've been at Elon for 24 years, and most of my teaching is on ethics. I'm a Christian social ethicist.
Hello, everybody. Peace and blessings. My name is Abdul Malik Harrison. I'm an assistant director in the Creed. I've been here for maybe a couple months now. I'm a graduate of Elon, graduated class of 2021. So it's good to be back in this space and back at Elon, and I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Venkataraman. I'm a senior music theater major. I am also an Elon College Fellow, completing my research in first-generation Indian American perspectives of femininity. And I'm part of Surthal on campus, which is the first and only Bollywood dance company. And I'm also part of Kappa Phi Lambda, the first and only Asian interest sorority.
Hi, I am Hunter Siegel. I'm a senior political science and international and global studies major, minor in peace and conflict studies, Spanish, and interreligious studies. Also college fellow and multi-faith scholar. I do too many things on this campus, and my research is on religious environmentalism, and I'm not sure what else to say, so I will pass it along.
God bless college students. Y'all just do things all day long. All day long you do them. And at night. It's nuts. I'm the Reverend Sadie Lansdale. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Greensboro. And what else do you want to know? Is that it?
Nope. Whatever you want to share.
Happy to be here. Elon's not as far as I thought it was.
So thank you so much for being here, all of you. And we really wanted to start with sort of personal anecdotes, your own perspectives about how your religious, spiritual, or ethical traditions have shaped your personal journey and the way you understand the world. So if you want to go ahead, Reverend Sadie.
Oh, my word. What? Could you say that again? How has your this? Okay. Does anybody know what Unitarians are? Okay, so like not a lot. Okay, great. So maybe I should tell you that first. Okay, so I'm a Unitarian Universalist. At the beginning of our worship services, we say that UUs believe that each person has a trustworthy relationship with the divine, with the holy, with the mystery, with the source of all life, with what some call God, though we name it and we know it differently from one another, and that because we are all interconnected, to quote Fannie Lou Hamer, no one's free until we all are free. So we strive to create beloved community here on earth in our fellowship with one another and in our work for justice. So this is sort of the spiel about what we are and what we do. So we're a church, but then a lot of people think we're not really a church. We used to be Christians. Some of us are Christians. Not all of us are Christians anymore. We do meet on Sundays. So, everybody remains like a little confused about us, but we have a really nice time, I would say. All right, so I grew up in a UU church in Bethesda, Maryland that had 4 choirs, teeny tiny kids, slightly bigger kids, middle school, high school, and adults. And I think that I'm the first person, aside from the daughters of the choir director, to sing in all 4. And I'm not that good, I'm like medium. I'm not a professional musician, but my first faith language is singing. And through all sorts of challenge and both, like personal, emotional grief, and then also larger political catastrophe, and all kinds of difficulty, my primary spiritual discipline is singing, which helps because like you heard in my spiel, many UUs do not agree on what we think God is, and many of us don't agree with ourselves. And but we are, as a people, very we're always like after it, we're always seeking the holy. We're always trying to figure out, is this just something I like, or like, is it holy? And how do we know? And so if any of you are musicians or singers at all, even if you are not the kind who would get paid to do it, you might resonate with music as a language that is operates at a level of depth that talking about stuff doesn't. And so for us, for UUs, like, we just don't always have great confidence in like articulating what we think the divine is, but kind of when you feel it. And yeah, maybe I'll stop there.
Does anyone else want to chime in?
Okay, so I'm going to tell a story that I think addresses this. So when I was just out of college, I worked for the national headquarters of the Presbyterian Church. I'm Presbyterian. And in that role, I was doing a lot of leadership development with young women. And that got me involved in the international ecumenical community. So for those of you who don't know what all that means, it's churches, Christian churches from around the world who work together on issues and meet together and talk about things and try to work to address often a lot of justice issues. That's what I was working on, particularly in my 20s and 30s. So I'm doing all this leadership development. I'm going to these conferences. And one of the first ones that I went to was in Jamaica, and there were 30 young women, all in their 20s, from all over the world. So some students, some professional people, and we were talking together about globalization. This was the early 90s, and just getting to know each other. We were there for 2 weeks. So I don't know, 22, 23, very green, very naive, and very much having grown up and been shaped by the U.S., in the context of the U.S., and being a Christian in the U.S. So I go to this conference. The very end, we have shared our lives and our stories about the impact of economic globalization on our lives. So coming from the U.S., I hadn't thought about this at all. Which is something that I shared with the Canadian young woman who was there. Being in the seat of power, you don't always know what's going on in your name around the world, particularly in the early 90s. So there were women from the two-thirds world, from the global south, who were sharing stories that were overwhelming to me at the time, and they were about the economic circumstances, poverty, war that they had experienced in their families and their communities. And so at the end of this event, we're going around the room as we're getting ready to say our goodbyes, and people are saying sort of what they want to do with their lives, sort of how we see our futures. And I stand up and say, I want to do some kind of work where I go to places where I help people who to try to address these problems that we're talking about here, which is a deeply committed Christian kind of norm, particularly for people of privilege, to want to be responsible to help other people. And a young woman who was a lawyer in Nigeria stood up and said to me, Shola Ajijola, if you want to help me, the best thing you can do is go back to your country and work on the problems with the IMF and the World Bank that are in your country, that are centered in your country, and that are destroying the livelihoods of the people in my country. Yeah. So in Christianity, we talk about metanoia. Metanoia is when your whole life turns around, when everything about your orientation changes. And for me, that was a moment, also believe, as a Christian, that God speaks to us through other people, through actions and words and communities. And God was speaking to me that day, and it transformed my life. My work now is on, I'm teaching a class. I just walked over here from the class I'm teaching on wealth and poverty that I teach every year about the global economy, where I teach them about the World Bank and the IMF, and the ethics that undergird economics and economic systems in our world, and work to try to help people, our students, as well as people in churches more broadly across this country and the world, think about and understand the ethics that shape our economic systems. And so that, for me, is an example of how my faith and my commitments have been a part of shaping my work and my life and my vocation.
Thank you so much. And I thought I heard a little bit of resonance over here from after some of your comments. So
I mean, I was just really moved and interested by that perspective, taking that moment that could have been hard, like a setback, as a step forward. I think that's really powerful. I think that's a huge part of like religious teaching in all religions. Coming into this, I am Hindu, so a non-Western religion, and I was trying to think of like things I would say that I would bring to this. Because coming to college, I think I really learned a lot more about my religion. I grew up in a very like privileged version of Hinduism, and I took a class with Dr. Amy Oloko. If anyone knows her, she's fantastic. She's in India right now with her J-term class. But that kind of changed my perspective on how I look at my religion and all religions, and just where I can learn and grow. But for me, religion was always like a connection back home. I grew up in an immigrant household with grandparents who lived with me half the year who didn't speak any English. So my connection with them was through religion, was through praying, singing, kind of what you were talking about. Like music was a big thing, like singing like Hindu like hymns, maybe like prayer songs. Like those were our way of like connection. And I think religion is, for me, like I watched the way like my grandparents, my parents led their life in a certain way. I guess a funny anecdote for going on stories. When I was born, I had a heart issue, and they were telling me they're telling my parents, obviously. There's a 50-50 chance of me coming out, like being able to survive this and like be normal heart issues. Anyway, my dad made a vow to God and said that if I was able to make it through that, he would take the pilgrimage to Tirupati, which is this pilgrimage in India, where you walk up this temple and donate my hair like to God, like as a gift to God. And we ended up doing that because I was fine. And I think as a kid growing up, looking back at those like pictures of myself with like a shaved head at 1 year old, which a lot of Indian kids do. It's a very popular thing. But I think like growing up, I was like, that is so ridiculous. That is so stupid. Like I look crazy. That is so embarrassing. But like coming to Elon, having conversations with people and learning more about like other people having that experience, the more I realized the underlying meaning behind that, the devotion and the care just to your family, to that religion, what it means to make a vow and like follow that through. I think that coming to college was realizing that these moments, right? Those moments that seemed like a step back, moments that were goofy, embarrassing, silly, that are part of religion, are actually can be looked at as steps forward. Learning from all of like the people I've met, not just Hindu people, but like talking with people from other religions, I am able to learn from them, gain stories from them, like find myself relating to things that they tell me. I think that's really special, and I just really like that story. So.
I can jump off that and, excuse me, and also jump on board the music train, because that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I come from a Jewish background, Reformed Jewish specifically, so like Sunday school, temple, youth group, all of that good stuff. And I played trumpet in middle school. And when I went, oh really, that's awesome. Still have my dad's old trumpet, second generation trumpet. And when I went to Jewish high school, from public middle school to Jewish high school, the music director didn't know brass instruments, so I changed to guitar. Fun fact, the music director was also the music director at my summer camp, another foundational shaping experience in my personal ethics and like religion and identity by having these experiences in like high school and youth group and summer camp to like really choose what I wanted, what I liked, what I didn't like, and build relationships. So I think all that's important, but I think I probably skipped a point or two. So for music, I went to high school then and I picked up guitar and took guitar class. And within my youth group, I got very involved in song leading and leading services, something that I even carried over to Elon at occasional Hillel and Truett Center things. And I'm not the biggest necessarily doctrinal, like I believe in all of the precepts and the beliefs and rituals of religion, but music has always been one of the ways that I think is most democratized among religion and helps connect the most because music is accessible and audible to everyone. But going back to, I guess, what has shaped me, I think those experiences and coming into college, like really, like the experiences I had in high school and before gave me like the personality, the spirit and curiosity and general well-roundedness that I have and that I take with me to keep an open mind and want to connect and learn from others. And I think I will end there for now.
Wow. Well, I think this question it's a little bit more complicated for me because I have a complicated history with religion. I grew up in a two-religion household. So my mother was Christian and my dad was Muslim. And kind of to go off the point that he just made, being well-rounded. So I was going to church, you know, wake up Sunday morning, your mom dress you and all that stuff, put Vaseline on your face, you go to church. And then on Fridays, I would go with my dad to Juma prayer. So growing up like that kind of helped me see, I guess, both sides of the coin, to see how the lifestyles of both of those religions are lived out. Like, you know, my dad, very, I don't want to say strict, but very strict, you know, obviously no pepperoni pizza or Christmas would come around and he would kind of be like off in a corner because, you know, he doesn't celebrate Christmas, stuff like that. But eventually my parents, they divorced and I would mainly live with my mom. So still going to church and things like that. But whenever I would go visit my dad, it would be, we would pray together. Obviously, like I said, no pepperoni pizza. Missed out on a lot of pepperoni pizza growing up. No. I've outgrown the taste. Yeah, turkey pepperoni. I will tear out some turkey pepperoni. Yes. So growing up in those two settings really helped me develop a sense of there is no right or wrong. You know, there is no right religion, wrong religion. These people are going to hell because they believe this or you believe that. I think it's all about, like what you believe. And I will say this, you know, parents are supposed to let you know, develop your religious beliefs and stuff like that on your own. My dad didn't take that hint. He kind of, and I love him for this, and he kind of tricked me into converting into Islam, which I will, that's a story for another day, but I'm very grateful for it. But I actually lost my dad when I was 12 to brain cancer. So since he kind of introduced me to the path of being Muslim and Islam, Islam is also another way for me to still honor my dad and still be in contact with him. I think somebody up here brought up like religion is like such a connecting force and grounding force. So for me, Islam, obviously, I believe in Allah and praying and turkey, pepperoni, and all that stuff. But it means so much more to me because a person that really meant a lot to me and helped shape me into the man that I am today, even though I lost him when I was a little bit younger, it helps me connect to him even in the spiritual realm. So it's, for me, my beliefs and morals and religion, it's complicated. It helped me be well-rounded so I can see both sides. I know what church is like. I know what Juma prayer is like and the masjids are like, but it also helped me realize, who am I to judge? There's no right or wrong because I live both lives, kind of in a weird way.
So thank you so much for that. And I think that leads very nicely into a question about bridging divides and diversity within our traditions, which I think some of you alluded to in the way you introduced. So each tradition has its own diversity. How do each of you engage with differences within your own religious, spiritual, or ethical community? And how can we each act to bridge those kinds of divisions? And as the Quakers say, chime in when the Spirit moves you.
I can kick this one off with a little bit of promotion for the Better Together program that is going to be run through the Truett Center as it was in the fall, time and day and all that, TBD. But that's something that I've always held. I'm going to circle back to that program. It's important, I promise. But I've always held the belief and core value that dialogue is good. Talking with other people, learning about other people, exploring our differences. But here's where other people fall off. Not only our differences, but our similarities. Because the truth is, we have so much more in common than we don't. And so many things, like for instance, I went to Jewish high school, and when I was in high school, my main activity was youth group. The only thing I did that wasn't Jewish related was Boy Scouts. So I was in kind of my own little chamber, and coming to Elon definitely broke me out of that, and I found more diverse friends, activities, and groups, and all that. And now I'm just foreshadowing what I just wrote for my Newman Lumen talk in February, so you can come to that too. But
Thank you for those plugs, Hunter.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm going to bring it back to Better Together. By engaging with others, and I think that breaking bread is one of the easiest ways to do that. Just sit down at a table and chat with people about anything. I think it's so important because, and also realizing that even within your own ethical, spiritual, religious tradition, within Judaism, I could have just stayed pretty reformed, but instead I have connections everywhere. One of my best friends is from Costa Rica and is an Orthodox Jew, and I'm very involved with Chabad on campus, but also just as involved with Hillel on campus, if any of you are familiar with those organizations. And so by engaging within our tradition, even with different groups that we may not typically, unless we make an effort, making that effort is important. So now, how to make that effort? I think it's very easy within our daily lives to just keep an open, this might sound like a cop-out, keeping an open mind and seeing where that takes you. But yes, and if you want a little help or are in the Elon community, Better Together is one action item that in this modern age of such division and polarization and all the crazy things in our world, I was like, hey, Hillary, let's bring a bunch of people to the table for conversations and see what happens to create some connections in community. And that is essentially what that program that we've been running since October, I think, has been for lunch every other week. And it will continue in the spring. We've seen some great results. Again, I'll talk more about it in Newman Lumen. So there is that.
I was reading these questions and I came across this question. I think when I came to college, like I was saying, I took that Hindu traditions class, and so much of my mind completely changed. I grew up in a very Brahmin Indian household, like very Hindu, very staunchly Brahmin, which is, if you don't know, like the highest caste in the caste system. And so my perception of religion was very privileged. And I didn't know that. So then when I came to college, Dr. Aloko approached me at a Surtal event, actually here. I was dancing. And she asked to meet with me and told me all about this class. I'm like, oh my God, like, this is great. I'm gonna do perfect in this class. Like, I know about my religion, I can do this. And I walk in. I got one of the lower grades in that class. And I'm a straight A student, you guys. I'm a straight A student. This is what, it was an ego, like, oh my God. But like, I walked in the class and she's telling me, so this class is going to be about Hindu traditions. She studies in a place where my family's from, in South India, Chennai. Speaks my dad's language. I'm like, this is great. And then she's like, we're gonna be talking about Hinduism from a lower caste perspective. And I'm like, what? I didn't know there was anything like that. I had no idea that there was any sort of difference. I'm sorry, I'm getting like a call like 100 times. I don't know why, it must be spam. I know, seriously. But I think that taking that one class, not doing the best in the class, like not terrible, but you know, not an A, I was like, ugh, so gutted. But like, it taught me everything. It showed me so much of my privilege and how much I didn't know. Even when I would come in and write like essays, she'd be like, this is a really interesting perspective, and especially interesting that you would bring this perspective in, because someone else might not see it, may see it differently. I think that this college is the time to like take these classes that you never, like I'm a music theater major. I didn't have to take Hindu traditions, but I think this is the time you get to explore all these things. Like, yes, we're doing so much in the day, in the night, but like, it's the time. That's the time you get to like really go out on your own and create these different ideas. And these conversations, just you guys sitting here for this conversation, hearing from so many different perspectives, is like bridging a gap. We are building a bridge together just by sitting here, having the conversation, getting to know someone else's perspective. That's building empathy. And all religion teaches empathy in all different ways, but this for sure is like, I think the first step is creating these conversations, being active in engaging yourself in the conversations, taking the classes that you're like, well, I don't need that, or that doesn't really sound that interesting, or I don't know. Like this is the time, because we're here, we're so lucky to be at Elon at this like safe bubble where you get to just take these classes, do what you like can, engage your mind in different conversations that you never thought you would previously. I think that was like what really stuck out to me when I was, yeah. So I'll leave it there.
I think this question, the answer for me on like engaging with differences within your religion, for me, in my journey would probably be vulnerability. So like I said, obviously grew up in a two-religion household, and when I lost my dad young, and he was the only like person in my family that practiced Islam or was Muslim, so for the longest time, I kind of, fell off the wagon, started eating pepperoni pizza again, and because I didn't really have that somebody there to say, you should do this, you shouldn't do this, or it's important that you focus on this, or it's important you focus on that. So I felt like for the longest time, I was almost like being fraudulent, I was claiming to be Muslim and practicing Islam, but from what I was seeing around me online and throughout the world, I didn't think that I lived up to those expectations. So the vulnerability aspect came in my senior year here at Elon. Like I said, I was kind of skating under the radar, felt, like I said, fraudulent, didn't really want to interact with Muslim students or anything. And this was towards the end of my senior year, and I hate that it was towards the end of my journey here at Elon, because I wish I would have did it earlier. But I sat down and had coffee with Imam Shane, who's over there, and I was so nervous before that meeting, because I was like, wow, I'm about to sit down with this guy, and he knows everything about Islam. Like, he follows it to the T. I'm gonna go in there, and he's gonna ask me, like, when do you pray 5 times a day? Have you eaten pork lately? Like, he was gonna go in and drill me, and
Action here from our campus imam.
And so I was really, really nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go into the meeting and just take it for what it is. And the meeting was great, obviously. Me and Shane are still friends, I think. And no, we're still friends. And I was very vulnerable to him. I was like, you know, the reason that I was a Muslim was because my dad, and I had a strong connection to my dad through the faith and religion. And it's not like I was actively practicing it, but, you know, I still believed in it and stuff like that. And like I was telling him, like, I feel fraudulent, didn't do Ramadan or anything like that. So I was being vulnerable to tell him that, you know, like, I'm not the stereotypical, or I don't follow the stereotypical, like, lifestyle of being Muslim. I wasn't raised in doing it or being it, but I still believed. And, you know, he took that and he helped me reach out to different student orgs on campus. And like I said, it was my senior year, so I kind of had to leave. And I'm glad I'm back now to be able to connect with Shane and other Muslim students on campus. But even in doing that, like going to Juma praying and stuff, like half the time, my first time in there, I did not know what I was doing, or I would be nervous. I'm like looking around, making sure I'm doing the right thing. And I would have to ask people, like be vulnerable enough to ask people, like, you know, what does this mean? Or when are we supposed to be doing this? And I think for me, that really helped, in my mind, overcome the differences that I saw within the religion. So being Sunni, being Shiite, or being really strict, or just, you know, kind of doing your own thing within it. Like, to be vulnerable enough to ask those questions helped me be more comfortable in my spirituality and my religion, and not look at people as like, okay, this person is this kind of Muslim, this person is that kind of Muslim, but we're all working towards the same thing, and we all support one another in our shortcomings or anything like that. So, make a long story short, I think vulnerability plays a huge role in bridging those gaps and differences within our religion.
So I'm going to complicate it a little bit, and I want to talk about it in two different ways. One is that, I'll do the hardest one first. One is that the last 10 years in particular, my work has been on abortion and reproductive justice. That is not a popular topic in culture, and it's not a popular topic within Christianity. And so my work is on talking about the way that abortion can be a blessing. Abortion can be something that is a necessary part of life. Abortion can save lives. Abortion is healthcare. It's part of what we need in the world. And that Christians can have abortions and be right with God. And that is not something that many evangelical and Catholic Christians like. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them angry. I have been the recipient of quite a lot of hate mail. I have a little folder on my desktop that says hate mail. Just toss it in there. And that has brought me right into the center of differences within the Christian tradition. And I think the thing, and I probably figured this out, I don't shy away from differences. That's part of what it means to, I'm also an ordained minister, to be a leader in a Christian community, to do Christian ethics is to help people talk about difficult issues in responsible ways. But the thing that I find troubling about it is the hate. So I really appreciate what you talk about. We need to talk together. We absolutely need to talk together, but we need to do it, we need to do it in respectful ways, in ways that help us think about and talk about our differences, even within a tradition, because that's really important to be able to say, we can love each other and care for each other and not think exactly the same things. We can worship the same God, we can share in prayer, and not actually hold all of the same beliefs. So that's one piece of my life and work. The other piece, remember how I told you about the World Council of Churches, the ecumenical work that I did in my 20s? That work for the last, I've been off the committee for 2 years, but for 16 years in my 40s and 50s, I was representing the Presbyterian Church on the Faith and Order Commission. So I said part of the work was around justice. That's the work I like. The Faith and Order is about how do we stay together? What does it mean to be Christian? What are the differences that hold Christian traditions apart? So it's the only place in the world where Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant theologians sit together officially and talk. So the Catholics are appointed by the Vatican. The rest of us are appointed by our churches. And we're talking together about the issues that divide us as Catholics and Orthodox and Protestants. I'm an ordained minister at that table with Catholics and Orthodox who don't believe that I am ordained, who don't accept my ordination. So for 16 years, that was not fun. That was, again, just a real challenge. The issues that we were talking about were largely related to LGBTQIA inclusion in churches, and the differences between not only our traditions, but regional differences among Protestants, and regional differences that shaped how people think about sexuality issues and gender issues. And so, again, at least that table was mostly civil. So having those conversations is really important, even if it's not fun and even if it's hard.
I appreciate hearing that from you, Toddy. I was raised Unitarian Universalist by parents who were not. My mother was a Southern Baptist in South Carolina in the 60s, and she was a girl, and she asked a lot of questions, and they did not like that. And she was very hurt by her faith of origin, and the way that her questions were answered to make her obey. So she had friends who weren't Southern Baptists, and she was instructed that they were going to hell. She was very concerned about this, and was told to, whatever the word is, convert them, and that would fix it up. And she was like, well, they go to church already. So, that was a no-go. Women couldn't do a lot of stuff also, and she was really concerned. She was like, what about the yak herders in Mongolia? What if they're good people who do good things, but no one's told them about Jesus? That doesn't seem right. Now, I don't actually know what is up religiously with yak herders in Mongolia, and neither did she when she was 8 in South Carolina in the 1960s. But her concern was now you're telling me that these people are toast forever, and they told her that's why she has to go on a mission. And it just her reception of these instructions was that she was told to shut up, to behave, to get married, to be quiet, and that her questions were a symbol of bad faith. So she became a UU, but I think honestly she was much more an ex-Southern Baptist than she really ever was a Unitarian. And what she liked about being Unitarian was not being a Southern Baptist anymore, but she didn't have to give up going to church. And I'm a little bit oversimplifying, but she was caused a really great deal of pain. So Unitarian Universalist congregations are really interesting because we are filled with people who describe themselves as refugees from mostly more conservative Christian communities, which have taught them things that are violating to their dignity. That if you are gay, you are going to hell. If you're a woman, there are things you can't do. If you any of your questions, any of your curiosity is an affront to God, and you must. The most important thing for you to do is to obey. And it's very confusing if you're obeying the man who's in charge or if you're obeying God, because those are actually not the same, as all of you know. So this like, I was raised in a church where many of the people were wounded ex-Christians who by and large did not really deal with the wounding. They just like changed a lot of the words and stuff. So they changed a lot of the words in the hymns, and then they called the sanctuary like the room or something. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of scrubbed some powerful, like weighty religious language from what we're talking about. They were like, oh, it's not worship, it's meeting time, or whatever. Like but I think to be generous to them as an attempt to reckon with like profound pain. And so I'm 34, so I was sort of coming into like, religious and political consciousness around the time of 9/11 and then the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, and just vicious homophobia. And so I thought you have to be accepting of everyone except Christians, because those people are really doing damage. And so I just was like, because I believe so strongly in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, excuse my language, but I'm judging the hell out of all these Christians, many of whom I did not know. I didn't know them, and we definitely didn't. Even if I did, we didn't talk about it. And so when I went to seminary, I was like, man, I better go get a whole bunch of Christian friends and sort of sort this out. This is like a big problem. There's like, 2 billion in the world. Maybe not everyone agrees. I should really find out in some of the way that you were describing, enter in some like real meaningful relationships with humility around the shared project of different traditions tackling liberation theology. I went to Union Seminary in New York. And I think what all that adds up to is like, there's something really meaningful and really powerful about the project of vulnerable curiosity and learning together and being really straightforward about the things that are challenging and different. But so often, interfaith spaces are created to cover power difference and like the vicious misuse of power and authority. And then we're like, we all got to understand each other. And it's like, I don't know, man, not if you're doxing me. So I would have had such straightforward answers to these questions before I went into ministry, and now it is so apparent that things are so much more complicated, and that there's so much terrible wounding all over, and that religious people and gatherings of religious people are often asked to seek what I understand as really cheap Band-Aids for the wounding of really like extremely well-funded violence and viciousness. That is like, I don't know, man. I don't want to have a nice talk about it. I suffer when my neighbor suffers.
So thank you for that. Yes, one last thing. No. Quickly, because
brief thought.
I don't like to cut anyone off.
Normal definition,
and brief.
not my definition.
Thank you, Hunter.
In the normal definition of brief, your idea of questioning that you raise in the Jewish tradition from God's relationship with the patriarchs, and again, patriarchs, not matriarchs, little pointed there in the Bible, but with Abraham specifically, this culture of questioning and Jews being people who seek knowledge and question and curiosity is just very much reinforced in the Jewish tradition. So that's what that made me think of.
No, thank you for that. And I think, talking about vulnerability, talking about standing up for what you believe, talking about asking hard questions, talking about learning more things, right? All of these are different ways that we can, as our Newman Lumen theme is this year, transform walls into windows, which is really why we're here today, to be in conversation. And I want to actually give everyone a time to talk for a few minutes at their tables. And because we have a little less time, I actually want to point us to the last question that you have on your table sheets, which is, what role do you see faith, spirituality, or ethical traditions playing in shaping a future where we can build bridges and transform walls into windows? And how are you called to act for justice, peace, and reconciliation in the world? So we'll take a few minutes and give you a chance to discuss at your tables. The panel will discuss here, and then we'll come back together for some questions and some closing thoughts. I hate to interrupt conversations, but I want to bring everybody back together. I'd actually like to invite folks from the audience to share a takeaway from your table, if you would like. If anyone would like to share.
Don't all raise your hand at once. We talked a little bit in the beginning about different faiths and how we recognize where they are in the world right now, and came to the realization of the more that some faiths or ethics or traditions or people are becoming extremists on one end, I think and we hope the more other faiths and people of spiritual and ethical decision-making are going to rally around a response on the other end. So the more people are committed to building up walls of hate and blocks and walls, the more everyone else is going to rally around and say, we are going to make these into windows and bridges.
Anyone else? And thank you, Jan, for taking the mic.
I don't need a microphone. Okay. This is my quiet voice. What I'm enjoying very much is, I'm a trillion billion years old. I love the growth and that we're at the point, and I'm sure it's a lot more than this, but this is my first exposure on how we all think and believe, and we know it needs to grow and evolve upward instead of staying stuck where it's been for a millennium now. And I like that finally the doors are opening and the fresh air can come in and blow things up and expand consciousness and awareness so that all the crap can be thrown away. Because there is a whole lot of good in everything and the way people think and go. Yes, some of it's very negative, but then that's a place to learn from. But since, from my point of view, since the Creator, I don't refer to the Creator as just that one word because it's much bigger than how we relate to that word. But everything in existence has been created by that which has created existence. So if there was only one way, there wouldn't be so many ways, would there? It's just a matter of finding the positive way forward, that one isn't being controlled or confined or whatever those other words are to be down here and that. And I want to be a part of all of this because I love the expansion of consciousness. Pushing, as teachers of my past have said, pushing consciousness out further to the level where you're on the border of infinity. Because creation, it only expands as people expand. I'll shut up now, because I can be a week.
Thank you. Any other tables want to share? Any takeaways, thoughts?
I do need a light. My voice is tired. I think one theme that came up for us is that a lot of us are really struggling with the current political situation, and there's a little bit of a disconnect between the ideals that we have religiously informed of caring for others and being open to everyone, and our actual capacity to have those relationships and to reach out, and just sort of, I'll put it in Jewish terms since I'm Jewish, the desire that there would be rachamim, sort of compassion, not just for others, but also for ourselves as we're navigating this new normal.
Thank you. So this is a time when I'd actually also like to invite questions for any of our panelists about something that you might have heard them say, about something that you're curious about something you want to follow up on.
I'll shout it out. Danny, you can stay there. I wanted to ask Abdul Malik, you said there's no right or wrong religion. is there right or wrong behavior towards other people?
That's a wow.
Came up with an answer, but you know, it goes for all religions. I think first of all, if Tara, you in a sense broke away from what you grew up in. Your world opened up, and that needs to happen in all of us because the religion I know is what I was brought up in. So how do I break out of that and learn that my faith isn't the only faith? And in that most of the major religions in the world do have at its base, treat other people the way you want to be treated. So
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's important to fall back to the principles and the foundations of whatever religion you associate with, which is treat others as you would want to be treated. And then another way to answer that question is strip all religion away. Think about how big this world is and how many different cultures, ethnicities there are. At the basis, I would say, I would hope, I like that hope, of like human nature is treating others who are different than you, not with hostility, but with love, with compassion, with understanding. Now, as humans, have we always got that right? No. No, but I would like to think that somewhere deep inside us, there's an innate ability and want to treat people, even though if they are different than you, with respect and with love and compassion. So that was nice. That was a great question.
Any other audience questions?
I just want to add to that, if I may, again, back to the fact that the God, the Creator, has created everything and everybody. Why is it necessary to treat people worse than, like you say, why would anyone want to be treating that which God has created as badly as people do, regardless of where they are and what they think? Where does that come from? For me, that would be a bit more satanic in nature than godly in nature, because God created everybody here and everything in the totality of existence. And if you're a Christian, didn't Jesus say, that which you do unto these, you do also unto me? So I don't understand why people want to be so mean and nasty and hateful without ever wondering that that's the negative that's controlling the people and keeping them separated from everyone. Anyway, I know. Shut up.
I think, well, I'll just tell you like a concrete thing. It's not very helpful to me to be like, people treating people, is it good? Is it, it's like, what do you mean? I don't mean like you, I just mean when we do this a lot, and like religious types, especially like scholar types, we do this a lot and it's really annoying. And maybe instead of annoying, I would say like less practical for figuring out like today what to do. So the church I grew up in had a long partnership with a community in El Salvador because the United States funded the Salvadoran government's massacre of its civilians during the Salvadoran Civil War. She was like, end with hope. I was like, all right. No, but listen, I promise. Okay, so we had a long partnership with this community in El Salvador that had rebuilt after the peace accords were signed in 1993. And similar to what Toddy was describing, I did not know what my government had done in my name in Central America in the 80s and 90s. And it's profoundly horrifying, and it makes me deeply ashamed to be an American. The slaughter that we were responsible for. The death squads of the Salvadoran military learned how to do that from us at the School of the Americas in Georgia. So and I thought, I'm 16, and I was like, I'm a pacifist. And I went into this trip, I was just like, well, I just think we should all like be kind to each other. So like, I don't believe in war or whatever. I don't think we should do war. And I learned to interpret meetings where people would describe taking up arms in defense of their communities because they were being murdered. That these are not people, these were not soldiers. They were coffee farmers who didn't want to die. And it is really, since then, it is really difficult for me to think about this, like, don't fight hate with hate thing when, like, the US military has trained people to hunt you down, which is what we did. So I just, like, I know this is, like, very horrible and bloody, but the power and, like, solidarity and meaning and rescue that I find is not in those of us, like, not currently being shot at, sitting around and pondering how other people should be more peaceful. But, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, do you feel like maybe that's not, this is a quiet room, my God. But instead, to, like, just take really seriously as a core commitment of, I think, you know, like, the right to life and human flourishing. Life, not conception life. The right to life and human flourishing, and that our rescue is found in total devotion to human flourishing, rather than scolding and judgment of people who find themselves in situations that we might not be able to understand. And participation in truth and reconciliation work is a kind of power and meaningful witness that is much deeper and not just not cheap. So I don't know, I mean, my wish for all of us in all of our communities is, like, where there has been really terrible wrongdoing, if there is any really terrible wrongdoing going on, to, like, find the courage to face it and to try to keep, like, all human life and human flourishing at the center of what we're trying to accomplish, which requires, like you've said, tremendous curiosity, both of you, and, like Abdul Malik has said, tremendous vulnerability, and which may result in hate mail for Toddy's email file.
So thank you for all of that. And I think, you know, what are our takeaways here? That these kinds of conversations where you bring together a diverse group of people to talk about these things, where to find hope and the ways that we can move forward, interfaith work matters. And having these conversations and being open to them, that's how we can move forward to transform walls into windows and to perhaps heal the world. So on that note, thank you to everyone for being here today.